Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the final round of the RCI Porsche Cup Season 2, and for the final time this year, an RCI broadcast. My name is Ryan Gill. I'll be your lead host for this evening, and joining me for the final round of the Porsche Cup is not the Porsche-loving George Smith all the way from South Africa. No, I've called in for Mike Jones all the way from the States to cast the final race of the season with me. How are you doing, Mike?
Oh, Ryan, I am doing fantastic. A little tired from the 9 hours at Imola that we put on yesterday, but that was a great race and one of the winners of that race, in fact, currently fighting for the championship here in the Porsche Cup, as I understand. Is that right, Ryan?
That is correct. Mike Noble, the man himself, is, gracing us with his presence here tonight for the final round of the Porsche Cup. Of course, he did miss round 5. He had to sign out for that one. So that has given us somewhat of a championship battle between himself and Martin Lawrence. 10 points between them in the championship. We'll show you those standings a bit later on. But Mike Noble returning to the grid here, and of course, not just gracing us with his presence, but also his horrific liveries as per usual. And you know what, Mike? I wouldn't have it any other way.
You say horrific, I say beautiful. Two different words for the same thing, Ryan. We both get the same result. The bright pink Porsche that maybe even Wolf Matushka may not like, with the Pico Endurance Racing team here putting in some practice. He just came in and sat down in the car for the first time with about 4 minutes left on this practice session. So had a bit of a long night celebrating the 9 hours of Imola win with him and Andre Frankie, and currently out just putting down a couple practice laps. But of course, 15 minutes of qualifying here for the Porsche Cup, and even around this quite long track of Suzuka, that still gives you quite a few laps to go out and do. 15 minutes is a very, very comfortable amount of time to set a qualifying lap, especially with the conditions here today. Not too hot, not too cold, optimum weather. A little bit of clouds, no wind to speak of, more or less. So 28C on the track is not too bad, even for these little Porsche Cup cars. Traction control around here, not having the traction control, I should say, around Suzuka, I think is going to make for one heck of a race, as this is, even in optimum conditions, Ryan, a slip-slidey track. And as we've seen during the practice session, quite a few people have spun themselves, and they've got an hour of racing to do. How many do we think are going to keep it on the track the entire time?
Well, we've got 20 drivers in for the race here tonight, and you've mentioned that a few people have gone spinning already in practice, particularly down towards the hairpin. Here at Suzuka, it is one of the trickiest corners on the circuit, and I've even heard that real-world GT3 drivers often turn the traction control up by 1 or 2 clicks for that corner specifically, to kind of help get out of the corner just a bit more comfortable and save some tires as well. Of course, you don't have that benefit with these cars, as you mentioned earlier. No TC at all. They do have the benefit of ABS, not quite as bad as the Maserati GT4, but still plenty difficult to drive anyway. This is Jesperi Hilakallio sitting at the top of practice for the final practice session of this season. Of course, Jesperi Hilakallio, he's impressed a few times in practice and qualifying, but has never really been able to fully challenge, should we say, for a win at any point this season, mainly because of Mike Noble's dominance. But Martin Lawrence is the only driver besides Mike Noble this year to have picked up a win. And of course, he is challenging for the title here tonight. 10 points between the two of them. And, if we're going on form, Mike Noble should win here tonight fairly comfortably. But, you can lose a championship in, well, the blink of an eye at a place like this. I mean, get one corner wrong, go into the wall, it could be race over and championship over. And it's one of the risks that Mike Noble and, well, Martin Lawrence as well will carry here tonight.
Yeah, and not even just Mike Noble, Martin Lawrence. I mean, they might be the ones fighting for P1, right? But we've got battles all the way down the field. Mikhail Sundstrom, Bart Macha, and Hilakallio, only 7 points between them, fighting for that final podium position on the point standings. And then, even going down farther, Dedicek, 198 points at with Hilicalio at 200. He's only 2 points behind. Further 10 points down to Alexander Guiglia, of course, Mikhail Sundstrom's teammate for endurance racing. And then even then, Peter Roche at 187, and even down to P9, P10, P11, those guys fighting for their own top 10 positions. Matt Samuel, Prioetti, Panker, all within 5 points of each other, trying to wrap up those top 10. Of course, Gergo Panker did have to sign out of one round of this championship. But of course, we did see Mike Noble sign out of a race as well. And I believe Martin Lawrence did as well, if I'm not mistaken, Ryan. No, Martin Lawrence hasn't missed one, has he? It was just Noble, I think you said. But, Lawrence has won 2, Noble's won 3, 6 races in the championship. Seems like one of them is probably going to win, but, we're going to find out here in about 80 minutes and know for sure as to who will win this. But Bent's out here, first one out for qualifying, and he's going to try and set the benchmark. Overall in the points, not doing quite as well as he might like compared to some of these guys. He's down in last place, actually, in the points. So, I don't expect him to be throwing down the lap that Noble will. But the Yellow Design Company 310, he's going to hope to have a good race at least.
I mean, it's a fair point you make, but to be honest, I don't really expect anyone to be throwing down the kind of lap that Mike Noble probably will in this qualifying session. He's he's been pretty imperious when he has decided to do qualifying. He didn't participate in qualifying for the Nürburgring race and ended up finishing second because of it. Didn't complete that last to first challenge. Martin Lawrence did deny him that personal victory, but of course he will be looking to pick up a good result here today. Probably should be picking up a good result here today. But anyway, Jonathan Bentz, he crosses the line and he will start the first lap of this qualifying session. So down towards the first corner here at Suzuka, aptly named first corner as well, as he makes his way round 2 sets of right-handers there, wanting to go plenty wide onto the side of the curbs and struggling to get the car turned in, it seems, as we come to the S's, and not really a great start to the lap from the South African here, and he makes his way through. They have struggled here, a couple of the South Africans in this championship. Quay Claessen's having to sign out, and I think the likes of Marcus Stein hasn't done the best either, but Jonathan Bentz will make his way through Dunlop and up towards the 2 Degners, the 2 probably most popular corners on this circuit. Of course, we've got Spoon and 130R as well, and not as committed on the second Degner as he was on the first one. Maybe just getting a bit unstable, but here we go, down towards the hairpin. This is one of the crucial corners. You have to get your acceleration right here. You can't get your power down too early or you will go spinning. Jonathan Bentz, not too bad coming out of the hairpin, it has to be said. It's been a bit of a scruffy lap so far, but he didn't seem to struggle too much coming out of that hairpin. Now he makes his way up towards Spoon. Double apex corner here. You've got to get this corner right. You will be getting a track limit if you go any further than where Jonathan Bentz is right there. Get too much of your car over on the right-hand side of the track. That's lap invalidated. Doesn't go too far right on the exit either, and makes his way on to the backstretch now and up towards 130R. In a GT3 car, you have a really minute lift for this corner. And in the Porsche Cup car, probably a bit more of a lift, just to make sure you don't go too wide and don't lose control of the car. Then towards the Castillo Triangle chicane. How committed is he over the curbs? Very aggressive on the first part. Not so aggressive on the second part, losing it a bit on the exit. And coming up towards the final curve now, getting all sorts of out of shape. And Jonathan Bentz will make his way up towards the line. He's got Jesperi Hilicalio trying to overtake him on a qualifying lap, and well, Jonathan Bentz will get the first lap of the session down, but he'll be immediately beaten by the likes of Jesperi Hilicalio and Mike Noble. But what's kind of impressed me there, Mike, is the fact that Jesperi Hilicalio's first banker lap is quicker than Mike Noble's, whilst he was probably being held up a bit.
Yeah, he was being held up a bit, but at the same time, Mike Noble could be just out there doing a bit of a sighting lap, getting his tires warmed up. He didn't get a ton of practice in, whereas Hilicalio obviously did, and he was quite far ahead of everybody as well. Entirely possible that we could see Hilicalio out here, throwing down the qualifying lap, just because he might have the setup for it. he might be set up to run these hot laps. Problem is, especially in these Porsche Cup cars at Suzuka, you can see how many tire marks are up on the track. Those mistakes, as Mike Noble's actually going to go off track here. I think he was a little too close to Hilicalio, and kind of invalidated his lap, got a little sideways. Rather return to pits, get back out on the track. But you can see how sideways these guys are getting all the marks down on the track, and you can just tell that these guys are going to continue to struggle for grip this entire race. You cannot be running too loose of a setup here. You will put flat spots on your tires. It will grain them down. But we do have a new potential P1 sitter during the qualifying session. Martin Lawrence took over that pole with about a 1.26 seconds ahead of the 203.255. And he's coming around the Degners right now as well, coming through for another lap. He is currently about a tenth up, floating around that 10th to 2/10 margin. And Sundstrom is up as well, back in P5. Dedicek is up quite a bit, and there's the time right there. That is what Lawrence messed up on his first lap. He just picked up 4/10 in the hairpin, Ryan, currently approaching Spoon. Let's see if he's able to hold it through here. He just picked up a couple more tenths coming in through Spoon. Good entry, but not quite as good of an exit as it was last lap, as he did kind of level himself out. Still 6/10 up, though, as he's approaching 130R, coming down that west straight. And it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, he's probably going to dive into the 202s at this point. And from my own personal experience, I can say that that's maybe about as fast as I can go in a GT3 car. More or less this Porsche Cup, rounding the final chicane and in the Casio Triangle. And he's going to go another 10th up. And this is going to be, about a 202.5, if I'm not mistaken, as he's approaching the line. And here it is, 202.514, in fact. And putting down that benchmark, saying, hey, Mike Noble, I am not here to play today. I am here to race. And just kind of showing that strength. So far, nobody seems to be getting even near that.
Yeah, Martin Lawrence doing exactly what he needs to do tonight if he is going to take that championship away from the likes of Mike Noble. Obviously, Mike Noble sitting about a second off the provisional pole time at this moment. Obviously, only that one lap that he got on the board earlier. Mikael Sundstrom had a bit of a mixed bag in the 9 hours of Imola just yesterday. But overall, not too bad of a result for the 899 nearly on pace team. And of course, 5th place here at the moment in qualifying. Isn't too bad for him, but finds himself almost 9/10 of a second off of the provisional pole time. He is up by almost half a second at the moment, making his way towards the Casio Triangle. You can see how much more Mikael Sundstrom can jump up if he can find about 4/10 of a second. He can put himself on the front row of the grid provisionally, at least. He is up by 4/10, a bit of a slow exit from the chicane. Will work his way up towards the timing line. He will go on to the front row provisionally, and Ondrej Dedicek will have to come back out and go again if he plans to start on the front row of the grid. Here is Bart Matcher for the Connection Lost Racing team. They managed to pick up a top 10, I believe, in yesterday's race, so not too bad of a result for Connection Lost. Of course, Martin Lawrence being a part of that team with Ondrej Dedicek and Peter Rocher as well. So they're going to be trying to find as much pace as they can. Final race of the season, and it's going to be the last race of the year for a lot of these guys, isn't it, Mike? I mean, there are a couple of communities running a couple more events until the year is over, but for the most part, and for a lot of these guys, especially up towards the the pro split around the ACC communities, this will be the last race of the year for them. So some of these guys are going to want to end the year on a high.
Yeah, end the year on a high, definitely. I mean, you always want to win. Doesn't matter when, right? Sim racers, this is something Jesse really likes to say, is it doesn't matter what's happening. They always want to win, and this is definitely. It doesn't matter it's the last race of the year, first race of the year, but this is definitely an important one, for a lot of these guys, like you said. It's going to be their last race. Obviously, there's the Kunos themselves actually putting on a little bit of an event in a couple days as just kind of a final hurrah for the end of the year. You're actually participating in that, if I'm not mistaken. But some of these guys will be there. Mike Noble, really quick, crossing the line here just momentarily, will not be enough to put him into P1. However, heck of a lot closer to Martin Lawrence with that lap of 202.9, I believe that is. Just 202.898, so just close to that 202.9. But yeah, Ryan. I mean, it's last race of the year. They're going to want to finish it off strong, come back, and start it off right as well.
Yeah, you're correct with the Kunos Christmas event, I think it's being called at this point in time. They're still a bit unsure as to which track we'll be racing, but my point of view for that particular race will be available here on the RCI channel. It's been a while since I've done a live stream as a driver rather than broadcasting or commentating, so it's going to be quite refreshing to do that. And of course, we might have some more stuff, kind of similar to that in 2021, won't we, Mike? I mean, we're going to be entering a couple of RCI teams into a few other communities out there across the course of next year, and obviously we have our own championships to run, but for the most part, we are sim racers and we do want to get involved in the action as well. So maybe if anyone is interested, you'll be able to follow the perspective of an RCI team later on in the year, and of course, later on next year. And we'd appreciate it greatly if you guys wanted to stick around and support that. But bringing us back to the present, Gergo Panka coming up towards the timing line now. Will start another flying lap. Finds himself down in 13th place at the moment with just 3 minutes of the qualifying session remaining. He has enough time to get 2 more flying laps in here, and considering that Gergo Panka hasn't had the greatest of times out here in the Porsche Cup, he's going to be looking to finish his race on a high as well. Here is Jesperi Hillicalio. We talked about his impressive performances in qualifying this season. Hasn't quite managed to snatch a pole position at any point this year, but has found himself on the front row of the grid a couple of times, and he's going to be looking to make himself further up the grid at the moment, sitting on the 3rd row alongside Bart Matcher. But it is still Martin Lawrence with that provisional pole time of a 2:02.5.
He might be at a 2:02.5, but Mike Noble is flirting with some time here. Currently only about 25 seconds into his lap, going through the S's, but he has a couple tenths up, so we're going to see how that resolves itself here in about another 90 seconds. Currently watching Alexander Guiglia, who is currently 0.7 of a second down. However, he's trending 4 tenths up, which should potentially put him up on the front row in that 898, nearly on pace Porsche. As he's rounding Spoon here, lost just a little bit of time, and this is really going to cost him, as you really have to get a good run out of Spoon, get that speed down through 130R as you climb this hill, and then touch those brakes ever so slightly, probably a little bit more than you would in, say, a GT3 or even a GT4 car, just to make sure that lack of traction control doesn't catch you, and the lack of downforce that these have in comparison. But as he rounds the chicane, comes out on the start straight, he did lose even a little bit more time, and he's only going to trend about a tenth up. That will pick him up a position, but will not put him where he wants to be, which is up on the front row. Actually, didn't even pick him up a position. He's still just shy of Hillicalio. By the way, Mikael Sundstrom, during that lap, while we were watching, his teammate did put down a heck of a lap, and he's now only 0.25 off of Lawrence, and put himself on the front row. But here comes Mike Noble around the chicane. Lost a little time coming out of the chicane. This is going to be very, very tight. He's trending less than a tenth up. I don't know if he's going to beat Mikael or not, and it looks like actually he will not beat Mikael Sundstrom. He may have invalidated that lap. He did improve ever so slightly. 0.03 of a second was all that he improved, however, and it's not quite enough, but it looks like he's got enough fuel to continue on that final lap. Sundstrom did have to go back to the pits. Martin Lawrence is out on a lap, but not trending upwards at all. He's about a half second down. Mike Noble is gaining a lot of time through these S's, same as he started last lap, and of course, that didn't come to fruition at the end of the lap, but currently 2/10 up. Here's Matt Samuel, by the way, half a second up. He was quite far back. This should put him more just kind of in range at the tail of the field. He may pick up that spot from Torvin, and he will actually. One of his teammates in the FFS Racing, along with Gergo Panker and a couple of the devs, usually. There's Hilicalio back in the pit lane doing some donuts while he waits for Mike Noble to finish up his lap to see what's going to happen. And I think that's kind of the surprise of the qualifying session right now, Ryan, is Hilicalio down in P7, 6.5 tenths down after showing the very dominating lap time in practice. And as you said, he's just not been able to translate that into into the race and in this session, not even to the qualifying. Oh, Mike Noble goes around, stops the car behind him as well. So that's going to be a P3 for Mike Noble out of qualifying.
He was up by just under a tenth of a second as well. I'm not entirely sure if it would have been enough anyway, even if he had got to the end of that lap. He probably could have put himself on the front row of the grid, but didn't look like he was going to be able to challenge Martin Lawrence for pole position. And as Bart Matcher comes towards the end at the moment, he's not up on his lap time either, so he's going to come across the line. And in fact, he's just going to go straight back into the pit lane, and that is going to be the end of qualifying. So Martin Lawrence takes the final pole position of the season, and more importantly for Martin Lawrence, that actually gains him a few points in the championship as well. So that closes the gap down to 7 points between the two of them. Of course, there's points for fastest lap as well, which will be obviously counted at the end of the race once all the finishing positions are decided. And for Martin Lawrence, it's good. He's put that car on pole exactly where he needs it to be. But you know what's even better for Martin Lawrence, and he probably wouldn't have expected it either, is that Mike Noble has found himself on the second row of the grid. And that's the first time this season that Mike Noble has found himself on the second row of the grid in a session in which he has qualified for.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he obviously, like the Nürburgring, he didn't qualify at all, right? And Noble, he does have 3 pole positions for the 6 races from this championship. So he has qualified and qualified on the front row for 3 of these. Well, not even the front row in pole. Martin Lawrence has 2 himself, and like you said, that will even them up, which I think is the interesting part, because now it's not even the section of Martin Lawrence is necessarily having an overall advantage for pole position. This will actually even them. So effectively, between Mike Noble and Lawrence, nobody's got any benefit from the overall perspective of the pole positions. Here is the standings, by the way. You can see only 10 points between them, Ryan. 242 to 232. That pole position rounds that up to 235 for Martin Lawrence. If I'm not mistaken, it is 3 points for that. So only 7 points difference between them, which, the thing is they can't finish P1, P2 and have Lawrence win. Even if he wins, that's not quite enough point spread for that to pull him up. He's going to have to separate himself by a couple positions. Hope that Mike Noble isn't in that second place. He's going to have to hope that Sundstrom, Machia, Hilicalio, Dedicek, one of those guys that are fighting for that final podium position are going to fight hard enough to get up to the top for Noble.
Yeah, it is going to be quite the challenge, isn't it? And as you said, Martin Lawrence, he's closed that down to just 7 points now, finds himself up on 235. And of course, the rest of these guys as well, they've got plenty to play for. Mikael Sundstrom, Bart Matcher, and the rest. But moving on to the second page, you can see the likes of Gergo Panker, 160 points, and it's 144 for Andreas Keifeline. Bit of a gap there. Daniele Flores on 136. A few gaps here between quite a few of these guys. We also got Jan Matthias and David Gill as well. But Jarkko Torvinen a bit closer to the likes of Gill, and Torvinen actually out-qualifying him as well for this particular round. Jake Boswell, unfortunately, having to sign out of the championship rather late on, so his points won't be changing at any point. But we did mention Marcus Stein earlier on. He hasn't had a great run for his championship so far, but he should be gaining a couple of positions here today due to him being able to attend. Alessandro Porter and Dustin Wust actually find themselves on equal points, but Porter unfortunately not able to race today. So assuming Dustin Wust gets to the end of the race, he should overtake him in the championship. And I believe the rest of the order that we have here, Wojciech Brigus is actually here for this evening, as is Jonathan Bentz, but all the drivers beyond that, which are Andy Boardman, Quake Larsons, Stephen Wurst, Pascal Bobbert, Sebastian Luigi Vita, Panos Karatas, Matteo Richter, Nick Reidners, and a couple of others are all signed out or disqualified from the championship. And you see the last two are Cody Pride and Jan Saganowski. So those are the championship standings for, well, the season as it stands right now. And of course, we are coming in to the final race, and we're going to have a 60-minute race, one mandatory pit stop for these guys to finish out the season. Martin Lawrence obviously starting on pole position, and Mike Noble on the second row of the grid. And we're not into the formation lap yet, Mike. But you know what? Let's hit it early whilst we have the
Here it goes.
Do you think Martin Lawrence can win the championship here tonight?
It's gonna be hard to say. I think that looking at qualifying standings as we're looking at them, we're looking at the sector times, right? We can see that Noble and Lawrence the exact same sector 1, but we saw that Martin Lawrence is 0.3 up in sector 2, and he's only 0.03 down in sector 3. I think that it really depends, because sector 1 and sector 3, is kind of where you do most of your passing on this track, right? So with Lawrence being ahead in sector 2, he may be able to put himself in a good position, say, coming into the hairpin, or coming out of the hairpin, perhaps. But, he's not really gaining any time, at least according to those hot lap standings, in coming into turn 1, coming into Spoon, or out of Spoon through 130R into the final chicane. It's going to be hard to tell. I'm going to be honest. I think, knowing how experienced Noble is in these Cup cars, that he's probably got the edge here. But if we can get Sundstrom, Dedejek, and Matcha up here fighting, making sure that they're in their own points battle, and they're all over Noble, especially at the start here, and Lawrence can kind of check out at the start, I think that Lawrence could take it. So I think it's all going to depend on lap 1 and how much Sundstrom and Dedejek are kind of fighting in the way.
Well, I've just, in the words of Jesse Lee, I've been doing some maths. And I have actually just looked at the permutations for today's race, and I haven't gone through a complete table, but I do have a couple of ideas for you here, Mike. So, of course, the 3 points that Martin Lawrence has scored himself through getting pole position obviously means that it's now a 7-point gap. If Martin Lawrence wins the race and Mike Noble finishes third, Martin Lawrence is champion. So if they finish as they are, then he is champion, as I believe we've just had someone disconnect on the grid. So if they finish as they start, he is champion. If they finish in this order and Mike Noble gets the fastest lap of the race, they will be level on points at the end of the championship, and Mike Noble will win, probably through having more race wins this season than the likes of Martin Lawrence. So, for Martin Lawrence, the goal is simple today for Martin Lawrence. He has to win, realistically.
Unless Noble has big problems, he has to win.
But the interesting thing for Mike Noble is that he did start at the back of the grid at Nürburgring, got caught up in a bit of traffic, pitted, found himself clean air, and basically hot lapped to the finish, where he was just a few tenths behind Martin Lawrence. He's not on the front row, and I've often said that when he hasn't started on pole, or even when he has started on pole, I've said, if anyone wants to beat him, you have to be ahead of him at turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
If you're behind him at turn 1, your chances of a win have gone down significantly. Now, Martin Lawrence has the benefit of Mikael Sundstrom alongside him, which is obviously not Mike Noble. So, I mean, Martin Lawrence, as much as he needs to win tonight, he also needs to make sure that Mikael Sundstrom can hold his own against the likes of Mike Noble. Because if he can't, then his win is in vain.
But
So
here's the thing, Ryan. If
there's a lot to take in.
If there's one person on this grid that Martin Lawrence is like, okay, I want you to fight Mike Noble, as we see somebody go off into the dirt there. It was a one-on-one car, I believe. If there was one person that he wanted to fight Mike Noble, I think that Mikael Sundstrom would be the choice there. You know, Sundstrom is, don't take me wrong, he is not as fast as, you know, some of the fastest drivers that we see, right? But Sundstrom is one of the best racecraft drivers, one of the best defenders that we you know, have the pleasure of watching here at RCI. And not to say that he might not be able to hold Mike Noble off for an hour, but there's a pit stop to play with here too, and that can make a lot of difference. That made so much difference so often in the Night Owl Championship. You know, that me and Jesse casted in Season 1, also the Season 2 Championship for Night Owl. The pit stop made the difference. People lose a couple seconds here, a couple seconds there. Somebody's under pressure. They get a stop and go for speeding, and it costs him. Look at Ismail Lebrecq in Season 1 of the Night Owl. It cost him the race at Kyalami. He got an SG30 on the final lap. He coasted to victory in that entire race, and then got an SG30 on his pit stop on the final lap, and it cost him all the way down to P6. And, you know, Lebrecq is just as good of a driver as Noble is. Mistakes can happen.
They definitely can, and like you said, it's not going to be decided until the checkered flag is waved on the winners. But here we go then. We have 20 Porsche Cup cars, or technically 19, as Jan Matthias is going to start in the pit lane, it seems. But we have 20 Porsche Cup cars on the grid here tonight, lined up 2 by 2 as far back as they go. 10 rows here tonight, and it is the season finale for Season 2 of the RCI Porsche Cup. Martin Lawrence and Mike Noble fighting for the championship. Martin Lawrence and Mikael Sundstrom on the front row of the grid. The championship leader on the second row. 7 points between the two of them in the championship. We're getting ready to go green here for the final time in 2020 at Racing Club International.
Green light.
Here
And
come
as
the
they get
lights,
away
Ryan.
on the line, Mikael Sundstrom, he's got to drive
Oh.
through penalty for being out of position on the start. And as that immediately thrown Martin Lawrence plans into the dirt as they go into turn 1, it looks fairly clean start from everyone going through. Martin Lawrence will take the lead. Mikael Sundstrom getting all out of shape, it seems, but keeping it into second place. And Mike Noble still in third as they do get through the first couple of corners nice and clean. Jan Matthias is let go from the pit lane, but disaster strikes Mikael Sundstrom right at the start.
Yeah, absolute disaster for Lawrence and Sundstrom both. We are seeing him hold off Noble a little bit there, but he's not going to be able to hold him off for long. He, of course, has to serve that drive-through within a couple laps, and it may not even matter as we come through Dunlop into the Dagners. There is Mike Noble. Ooh, pushes a little bit wide, and Sundstrom is able to stay on the inside. Coming around Dagner 2, they are still side by side. Coming into the hairpin, though, Mike Noble is going to have the inside line, and that generally means that you have the position going into the hairpin, and it looks like indeed they are going to stay side by side, but who's going to get the launch? It will be Sundstrom going a little bit wide, and there goes Noble taking off, and we are going to see him try to chase down Lawrence. He's got 59 minutes to make sure that he can stay at least in that position, but we are going to see Sundstrom probably drop off the track. I would not be surprised to see him go in on lap 1. Currently back watching Peter Roche back in P6. These guys have lined up single file pretty much most of the way down. We did see an incident a little bit in the back, if I'm not mistaken. There was one car that went off, or two. But these guys single file coming into 130R for the first time. Who's going to make the move into the chicane? Will we see somebody go for that dive on lap 1? Dangerous one with cold tires here at the Porsche Cup, but looking pretty good so far.
So as it stands, Martin Lawrence will lose the championship if things stay as they are. Mike Noble doing exactly what he needed to do on the first lap of the race, but still 58 minutes to go. And of course, pit stops to serve as well. Mikhail Sundstrom into the pit lane to serve
Speaking of
that
pit
drive-through
stops,
penalty. And Alexander Guglielmo and Jesperi Hilacalio follow in suit to get their mandatory pit stops out of the way. I'm assuming that's going to be to avoid traffic that they could be encountering early on in the race if they think they're going to be held up. And as George Smith would say, I kind of like that idea. Mixes up the strategy, and it's going to be interesting to see where they come out later on in the race. But as they stand from the first lap of racing, Martin Lawrence leads from Mike Noble, and Ondrej Dedicek has now slipped up into third place with Bart Matcher and Peter Roche behind. It's 4 connection lost racing cars in the top 5.
In the top 5, and of course, Gergo Panker there sitting in P6. Flores and Samuel, P7, 8. Stein and Burgess in P9 and 10. And currently looking at Gergo Panker as they get a little sideways coming out of the Degners. We're going to see that for the next 58 minutes, pretty much every lap. Most of these cars are just going to get a little out of shape coming out of the Degners. It's a very difficult corner to come out of, even in a GT3 car in these good conditions, more or less these Porsche Cup. And we're watching through Gergo Panker's windshield. We saw Dedicek and Macha be all over the back of each other in front of them there as they approach in the spoon. Roche in between Panker and them, and a little bit of the dirt caught there. I believe that was by Macha in the 55 connection loss racing mobile. But he's going to try and get a little bit of slipstream down to 130R. And that's really what you have to have in these cup races as well. You can't just make the overtake based on your car's performance. It's not like one of these is in a Mercedes and one of these is in a Ferrari, and that Merc's going to come off the corner and sprint down. These are in 2 Porsche Cup cars. That means you have to hit your line perfectly. It means you have to use the slipstream perfectly to get the passes done. Watching from the front splitter cam of Bart Macha here, you can see, these guys getting reasonably equal runs off the corner, but you can tell just how much, he's just barely catching, because he's just not deep enough in that slipstream right now.
Yeah, Bart Matcher trying to keep pace with the likes of Ondrej Dedicek and Martin Lawrence right now. If there's anything that Martin Lawrence is asking for right now, he's asking for one of his connection lost teammates to catch up to Mike Noble and overtake him. I mean, if you're going to talk about potential team strategies and team orders right now, well, Mike Noble finds himself in a bit of sea of connection lost racing cars, but I'm not entirely sure if any of them can match the pace of Mike Noble, but we'll have to see how that goes on. I think if anyone is going to match that pace of Mike Noble, it's probably going to be the likes of Ondrej Dedicek. I mean, he's had tutelage recently from a certain James Parker, and he definitely seems to be getting better and better as the days go on. Certainly noticed a massive improvement in his racecraft and his pace from the days when I used to race him. But Gergo Panker is thinking about making up a position into the hairpin now on Peter Roche. He's going to have the inside line. Roche gives him the room there. Probably didn't need to give him the room, but very respectful to do so. And unfortunately for Gergo Panker, not quite going to have the acceleration out of the hairpin to get past the likes of Peter Roche, and he will follow him in suit all the way down towards Spoon. Meanwhile, I think Andreas Keiferlein is another car that has come in early for a pit stop. He's now down in last place, but he has got that green marker alongside his number now to indicate that he has completed that mandatory pit stop. So he's going to be one to watch for as well to see where he comes out later on in the race. 6 minutes down, 54 to go, Mike.
Yeah, and of course, Keiferlein is fighting Flores for position in the championship. There's about 8 points between them. And our the point system here at RCI does work where you get bonus points above P10. Down below that is pretty linear, as we're seeing Gergo Panker actually dive into the pit lane as well. He wants to get out of the traffic. He realized he was losing a little bit of time fighting Roche. These cars were not spreading out far enough for him. So he's going to dive into that pit lane, take his mandatory stop. Of course, only fuel needed here at Japan Suzuka Raceway. Only need to come into the pit, make 1 liter of fuel into your car, and you can come on out. Just to make sure that you do have to take a stop and add a little fun to it, but you don't have to make that full 30-second stop. So pit times should be floating around the 42 to 45 second mark, give or take. for the remainder of the race. Of course, all the guys that did come in early pretty much hit that mark. We saw, Hilicalio, Guiglia, Kaferlin all come in. Now Gergo Panker coming out as well. Of course, Mikael Sundstrom, that drive-through cost him 35 seconds. On top of that, having to slow down on the track and whatnot. But the pit stop itself, he's still going to have to come in for that, and that's going to lose him at least another 45 to a minute when you count the slowdown, a little bit of an outlap, warming up the tires, and he's all the way down in what is effectively last position. Besides for David Gill, Ryan, who we didn't catch it, but I think he made a bit of a mistake, and Sundstrom was able to make up at least one position as he's trying to work his way back up.
Yeah, I think the likes of Jill. So there's definitely a couple of people that got caught up in some sort of incident, whether it was their own doing or if two cars came together. We don't entirely know yet, but we do have live stewards here tonight, and they will be, of course, looking at every incident that goes on over the course of the race, so they will let us know if there is anything to look at regarding incidents. In the meantime, Martin Lawrence does still lead the way, but I tell you what, Mike, the gap has come down. Noble starting to close in. Martin Lawrence 7/10 slower on that previous lap than his personal best that he has set, so definitely made a mistake somewhere across the lap, Martin Lawrence, and that has allowed Mike Noble to close back up to him as well. Ondrej Stedicek just starting to drop off pace as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be interesting now to see when Mike Noble does catch up to the back, because I think it is probably going to be a case of when he catches up, if he can get past Martin Lawrence. And, well, if he can't get past Martin Lawrence, I don't think it's going to be too surprising if we see him potentially come into the pit lane a bit early. But I think he'd probably want to get that overtake done on track if possible. But coming back, fight for P10, Jonathan Bentz and Jan Matthias coming through the S's.
So, Jan has made up quite a bit of time. He was the one that started in the pit lane. He has made up quite a bit of positions here. Good on him. But I want to touch on what you just said about Mike Noble for a second. I do not think that he's going to make the early pit stop. I think that he's going to pressure Martin Lawrence into making a mistake, because actually we're going to get a little bit of a potential pass here going on, coming into the hairpin. Matthias going on the inside of Bentz here as they come into the hairpin. That 256 hard on the brakes. You can see him almost stop trying to keep that inside line, but Bentz just went too wide, and that is going to be a position again for Jan Matthias here. And that 256 up into P10 overall after starting from the pit lane. Not bad from him. Excellent little run he's having so far. Of course, he's pretty far back in the order of the championship, P14 in the championship, but a good showing from him. But Ryan, touching back on that really quick. Here's the thing, and I'm curious of your opinion on this. I don't think Noble makes the stop because he knows that he wins the championship in P2, right? I think that he pressures Martin Lawrence into making a mistake and costing himself time on track. Mike Noble, he doesn't necessarily need to pass Martin Lawrence. He doesn't need to push and dive and get in there. He just needs to get on his bumper and make him mess up. And, that's all he needs to do. He could go the next 50 minutes without passing him and just force Lawrence into a mistake and still win the championship. And
it's entirely possible. And, it is a strategy that we have kind of seen implemented before in racing, just, in the real world and, of course, in sim racing as well. But, I think Martin Lawrence, he's going to be a bit upset, isn't he? I think he's going to be more upset at Sundstrom than he is probably at himself for making whatever mistake he'd made earlier that cost him, almost a second a couple of laps ago. And, I kind of just get the feeling that he's upset at Sundstrom because he thinks, oh, well, there goes my chance of having some sort of barrier between me and the likes of Mike Noble. But we saw Mike Noble lose the car in qualifying. We know he's not invincible. He's very quick. He's very consistent. Pulled off an absolutely fantastic overtake in the Imola 9 hour, getting a Bentley between a gap I did not believe a Bentley could get through. But you know what?
Highlight reel.
He can make a mistake. It is possible. It's rare, but Mike Noble can make mistakes, and We saw that in qualifying, and maybe you say, okay, well, he's going to be a bit more conservative in the race because he doesn't want to risk losing his championship, and maybe there's people thinking, he's not going to pressure Lawrence for the win because he doesn't need to win. Let me tell you something about Mike Noble. Mike Noble doesn't. He's not going to listen to you if you say to him, Mike, you don't need to win today. In Mike Noble's head, he needs to win today.
I don't think it's not that he's not going to want to win. I just think that he's not going to play the strategy, the pit strategy to win. I don't think he pits early. I think that he wants to stay on track and pressure Martin Lawrence into making a mistake because he doesn't have to push. Because he knows that he just doesn't have to go for that I don't necessarily want to say the word dangerous, but he doesn't have to go for that dangerous overtake, you know what I mean? He can kind of sit on track and sit behind Lawrence and just kind of fill his mirror until that mistake is made. I think that no matter what, you're right, Mike Noble is absolutely going to want to win, of course. I mean, it's Jesse's favorite saying, it doesn't matter who's in front of you, what position you're in, what class they are. Racing drivers are racing drivers, and they're going to want to fight for that position in front. Doesn't matter if it's P1, P17, P50. They're going to want it, as we're seeing Noble all over the back of Lawrence coming out of the Degner to there, approaching the hairpin. But I think it looked like he let off the throttle ever so slightly. He didn't look like he got much loose coming out of the Degner there. And I think he let off the throttle a little bit and let Lawrence just that touch of room to breathe because he didn't want to punt him and get that penalty that might come from it. But he does have a little bit of a run here coming into Spoon. It looks like he's strong coming out of the hairpin and not able to do anything in Spoon here. But we're going to see if he can maybe get a run coming out of Spoon. We did see Lawrence lose just a touch of traction there, and he is getting closer. And this is where I think he's going to make the pass if he can at some point. He's going to come out of Spoon, come in that slipstream, and dive in through the chicane. You may not see it this lap. I don't think he's quite close enough because in these Porsche Cup cars, a tenth can still be quite a bit of time, especially with drivers of this caliber. But, I mean, he's just filling the mirror. He is just filling Lawrence's mirror all over the place. And I'm kind of curious, what lap times are these guys running? They're about a second off their best times.
Yeah, 2:04s seem to be what they're going at the moment. Although Martin Lawrence, 2:04.9, 1.7 slower than his personal best in the race so far. So Martin Lawrence definitely struggling out there, and you can see in the background, Bart Matcher hasn't let Ondrej Dedicek run away with third place either. The two connection loss teammates going to be fighting over that third place. They have left Peter Roche behind. And of course, Peter Roche is, in a way, kind of in a battle with Gergo Panker, because Gergo Panker went into the pit lane earlier on. And it's going to be interesting to see if Peter Roche comes out ahead of Gergo Panker, if Gergo Panker has found that clean air and he's going to be able to work his way up through just being able to do that hot lap. He does have clean air, in fact, Gergo Panker, but he's also got Alexander Guglia just about a second behind him as well. So if Guglia can find some pace and get onto the back of Gergo Panker, that could spice things up as well and possibly ruin the strategy. That's the one downside that you have to the early pit stop, is if someone else who's particularly quick or quicker than you also decides to pit, you can get caught up in a battle with them, or maybe it's someone who's slower than you, but you struggle to overtake them. That can ruin your strategy entirely. So the early pit stop, it's a bit of a gamble sometimes. I mean, I know George Smith, he loves to see it, and I quite like to see it as well. It's a very sensible decision a lot of the time, but it can be a double-edged sword in some situations. But as we look back a bit further down the grid, Jonathan Bent's chasing down Dustin Wust at the moment, and we were talking earlier, Mike, hasn't been great for the Wust brothers. Stephen Wust unfortunately having to sign out of the championship, and Dustin Wust not as high up as he would like. It's always great to see sim racing brothers around. Of course, we know Cormac Ryan Meenan and Killian Ryan Meenan as well, and of course they'll be joining us for some events in 2021. And it's nice to see the Wust brothers out as well, but they've definitely struggled as of late in the last couple of championships that we've seen them in.
Yeah, they have. We were, like you said, we were talking about this off air earlier, and kind of curious at some point to chat with either Dustin or Steven and just see if they've had some struggles or something, because we used to see them, not, they weren't ever alien pace. They weren't going to be fighting with the likes of Noble or Jardier or anything, but they were pretty quick. And Dustin Luce, of course, back in P20 in this championship, and last couple of races we saw them in, they just kind of struggled with their pace a little. A little disappointing, but in the end, it's something, they're still here enjoying themselves, as we just saw Jarkko Torvinen pop
Ooh.
up a drive-through for causing a collision, and currently awaiting that slip of paper handed to us from the race controllers. But that did pop up saying for a collision in game, which means he must have caused some sort of incident, and that's going to cost him about 55 seconds through the pit lane. At some point here, we can see a little bit of damage there on the left side of his car, just a little. So he must have gotten sideways at some point and caused a bit of a problem. But unfortunate for him, Jarkko going to get that drive-through penalty. And, he's already back in P11, obviously not having the best race for Jarkko. But, you never want to see that. Good for Sundstrom, though, who's, by the way, made himself up to P12.
Well, it's the shining light that Mikhail Sundstrom can look at now. He said he's not alone in the drive-through penalty club, although both of them getting drive-throughs for completely different reasons. And we switch back to the battle between Martin Lawrence and Mike Noble, and nothing seems to have changed at this point in time. But Matt just seems to have lost a bit of time to the likes of Ondrej Dedicek. And would you believe it, Mike Jones, Mr. Stephen DeVust has actually just come into the commentary box, and he's got a very unfortunate looking piece of paper that has the words drive-through penalty printed on the top of it, although he is still signing off the paperwork, so we can't quite see what exactly that was. And oh no, he's handed it over to me right now. Thank you very much, Stephen. So drive-through penalty for number 15 for unsafe rejoin on lap 1, causing multiple takeouts. Now I wonder, Mike, if that had anything to do with the cars we saw a bit spread out towards the back of the pack on lap 1.
I'm sure it did. I would not be surprised to see that. And while you were talking about that, I was actually signaling over to our producer, Nick Setnick, to see maybe if he has any sort of video of that at some point when we can. Of course, currently still watching Noble all over the back of Lawrence. But hopefully Nick can queue us up maybe a potential replay for that if the video is there. And I believe he is giving me the thumbs up. Nick, let's go ahead and go over to that really quick, and let's just take a look and see what we can see from that incident. If you can, here we go. So this is the 310. Oh, there it is. So he's off track there a little bit. Nope. That was
no,
not
that
him
was...
off track. Yeah, there it is.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Actually,
so...
But that's...
That was the 310.
Jarkko Torvinen wasn't involved in that at all. That was rather strange.
Yeah, do we...
I wonder if that's the wrong... Is that the wrong replay then? Maybe.
Very, very possible. Yeah, I know the video for the replays can get a little iffy at times. But that is all Nick was telling me that he had queued up. So, but that was a bit of the incident on lap 1. That was Bentz that we saw. This driver right here that kind of tapped the driver off track. So I'm curious to see if we are perhaps handed another slip of paper from the other room, as we're seeing Bentz get all out of shape there coming out of Spoon. And again, the Degners and Spoon, every time we catch that camera coming out of Degner 2, we are seeing those cars go all over the place. And coming out of Spoon is the other one that is really bad for these cars. They're going to get sideways, coming out of there. Oh, speaking of sideways, there goes Dustin Woost off the track. He is going to slam the wall on the left side. And there we go again, Ryan. Just that little bit of struggle that these Woost brothers are going to have. We are seeing a bit of a replay here from the heli cam. We're going to see him come off that 130R, clip that curve just a little bit, and it sends him straight into the grass. And there he is, boom, into the wall. Doesn't look like he hit too hard. I think that's going to be something that hopefully he might be able to ignore when he goes into the pits. But there it is right there. It's those Woost brothers, Dustin and Dustin and his brother are just slight errors coming from them recently. It's unfortunate, but that's going to cost him a couple positions there at least, but hopefully not too much damage.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that damage does get repaired. Like you said, maybe it won't affect them, but I'm kind of looking at how he kind of tapped the wall there. Going to be a bit of front end damage that I think does need to be repaired, and especially in these cars as well, they can be so sensitive to damage. But at the front of the order, Martin Lawrence does still lead from the likes of Mike Noble, and Bart Matcher chasing down Andrej Dedicek for third place has actually closed back up to him again. So these, these little pairs of drivers just sticking together with each other at this moment in time. And, well, Mike Noble not quite pressuring Martin Lawrence into a mistake just yet. There is no question that Mike Noble is lapping quicker than the likes of Martin Lawrence. But no mistakes coming out yet from the Connection Lost Racing 171 car. And Gergo Panka, we were talking about him earlier. He's on the back of Jonathan Bentz at the moment, the South African who hasn't had a great time out in this championship so far. Now, this is kind of the double-edged sword that I said can happen to you with this early pit stop. Now, Gergo Panka has found himself behind the likes of Jonathan Bentz, and whilst Gergo Panka has completed his mandatory stop, mistake coming out there from Gergo Panka. Alexander Guglia is going to go by, and I think Jesperi Hilikalia is going to have a look as well. Here goes to the right-hand side of Gergo Panka, and he's going to get past him before the braking zone down towards turn 1. But I tell you what, Gergo late on the brakes. Is Hilikalia going to get it done? Yes, he is, through the second part of the corner. And I tell you what, Mike, that is kind of a perfect example of what can happen when, you take that early pit stop and it doesn't quite work out because you get caught up behind someone slower than you. You make a mistake, and any of all of the time that you gained by taking that early pit stop has basically gone down the drain now.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Gergo knew that, it was likely when he saw Gwiglia in the pit lane and, of course, Hilicalio in the pit lane, that he probably knew they would be just a little bit faster than him. But the thing is, for the most part, he wasn't caught up in a bunch of traffic, so I think he's still going to do okay. Gwiglia and Hilicalio were drivers that I think he knew were likely going to be ahead of him anyway. He's more fighting that mid-pack a little farther down. He wants to be, Proetti, Samuel, and those are the drivers he's going to want to be ahead. So it's really I think for him, the question of, is he going to be ahead of those guys once all the pit stops shake out? So far, he is ahead of Matt Samuel by quite a few seconds. And of course, Prioetti has not taken his pit stop yet, but he's back in P11. So he's going to lose quite a bit of time during the pit stop and may be able to sneak past him as well. Panker 4 and 5 points behind the two of them respectively. And that means that he's going to need more than just a position or two. He's going to need a little bit more. But here is Hilicalio on camera now, and we're going to see Panker come down again. He's going on the outside into the chicane here. Looks like he's actually going to just kind of slide on past, easy peasy. And that's a heck of a pass there by Panker. We didn't quite catch it, but I think Hilicalio may have hit the curb coming out of 130R a little hard, and that kind of threw him off base and let Gergo go on by. And now he's going to have to fight for it again as they're weaving back and forth coming into the first curve. He doesn't have the run at this point, though, and he's going to have to settle back behind. Is this, actually a little bit of a sideways action going on in front. I believe that's Bentz in front of them, if I'm not mistaken. That is indeed the 310 of Bentz, and that kind of checked them up. Bentz is kind of all over the place at the moment. Looks like he's maybe got some flat spots on his tires that he's struggling with, and this is not where you want flat spots, is through these S curves. Not easy to pass through here, and if you get slowed down through here, you can lose a lot of time through the lap, and that's what we're seeing. Gergo had to back off there rather than risk punting anybody coming off, but now he's back up to pretty close to that rear wing of Bentz that we're looking back from, flashing the lights a little bit. He wants on past to put some, put something between him and Hilicalio. There he goes, going wide. Panker's going to slide on past. The thing is, will Hilicalio be able to get past or not? And actually, Panker didn't get the run out. Oh, there's the curb. from Bence. He's going to tap the curb, and that's going to send him wide again. Bence is struggling right now, Ryan, but there he goes. Hilicalio going to be on the outside, and he's going to get that little bit of buffer, and that's exactly what Panker wanted. He wanted to slide past and get a little bit of clean air, maybe get at least a few tenths between him and Hilicalio before Hilicalio can slide past.
He's lost so much time, though, behind Bence, and this is the problem. I mean, Gogo Panker probably thinking to himself, move out of the way, Jonathan Bence, but the reality of the situation is, you know, Gogo Panker's completed his pit stop, but Bence has every right, you know, to defend his position. They are still racing, even if, you know, Bence still has that pit stop to serve. He's still got every right to defend for his position, even if realistically it doesn't really make much sense to do so. It kind of holds yourself up and the driver that you're fighting against, but, you know, he doesn't have to move out of the way, and, you know, he's deciding he doesn't want to move out of the way either, and, you know, you can't blame him, because that's, you know, that is the way that racing works. And Hilicalio going to have a look into the first couple of corners, but not quite able to do so, and I imagine he's probably going to have to follow Jonathan Bence through this sector here. You have to be significantly quicker than someone to overtake through here, and you need so much grip as well to do so, and there just isn't the grip on the outside line through the S's here, and it's so painful for Hilicalio. We can see Panker disappearing up into the distance, and it's just one of the issues that you find yourself in if you take that early pit stop and end up behind someone who is slower than you and you struggle to get past them. I think Gogo Panker, realistically, his efforts at undercutting Roche have probably gone down the drain at this point, and Jesperi Hilicalio, his efforts of catching up to Gogo Panker are, well, they look like they're going down the drain by the second here as they come out of the hairpin, and Jonathan Bence is still not giving way.
No, he's not. I mean, we did see Hilicalio, you know, get right up on him. I mean, there was barely a paper's width between them and the hairpin, and I'm sure that's going to happen here just in a moment for Spoon as well. He's going to get a little bit early on the brakes, make sure that he doesn't tap the back of him, but both of them going just a touch wide. We did see Bence right up on that, you know, the bit of the rumble strip on the top there, and that lost him just a bit of the momentum that he needed. And there goes Hilicalio down that west straight, approaching 130R. He's going to finally get past, but as we hit the timing marker here, 1.849 seconds now between him and Gergo. And just 2 laps ago, Ryan, Hilicalio was out ahead of Panker. Almost 3 laps now, I suppose, as we're now, you know, approaching the start of lap 14 for these guys. Just to the point here of halfway into this race. Everybody who's joining us, we appreciate you joining us here today in Japan, Suzuka. This is our Porsche Cup Championship finale. Currently, these two drivers right here are fighting for the championship win. 7 points between them as we started the race at the top of the order. We do know, as Ryan pulled a Jesse Lee and did some maths, that Mike Noble needs to finish at least 1 place behind, or, you know, 2 places behind, I suppose, behind Lawrence for Lawrence to get the victory. That means that Noble would need to slide down to 3rd, and so far not looking likely, as Dedicek is 3.8 seconds behind. But as we've got maybe a little bit of a break in the action here, just want to give a shout out to our sponsors, affiliates, and you know, people who kind of generally help out here at RCI. Race Department brings our technical partnership. They help pay for all of our servers, as well as assist us with a myriad of other things. And of course, AK Informatica, who has partnered with us through Race Department. They actually do provide our server on the day-to-day basis. And of course, we have Race-Face Speed Labs, South African community that provides some driver coaching. You can go out to South Africa and get tutored by the likes of Jordan Sherratt and Bruno Cadili, some of the fastest names in ACC and sim racing. And as Ryan likes to put it, even I approve of them. And I am not fast. I had a session with Jordan Sherratt myself and picked up quite a bit of time, quite a bit of knowledge for that. And of course, we have a discount code as well. ! Discord in the chat. Come and join the Discord. Check out the driver coaching channel. You can get yourself a discount for the Speed Lab session, which are pretty affordable to begin with. You can check out that in the driver coaching channel. Of course, give us a follow, give us a like, give us a subscribe, and come on back for more action. This is our last race of the year here in 2020. But we will be back in 2021 with quite a bit of content, coming out with 4 5 championships a week, including one in Race Room. And then, of course, our World Tour Endurance Championship as well, monthly Endurance Championship, starting with Silverstone on the 20th to see Mike Noble just get all out of shape. That is where it could go wrong right there. I mean, again, Ryan, I talked about this earlier. Degner 2, you coming out of Degner 2, every single time we are on a car coming out of Degner 2, what happens? They get sideways. And if Mike Noble loses it there, Dedicek's, he's not far enough down the order that it's not going to matter if Mike Noble loses it. And that's going to be Lawrence's shot. But currently back over to Gergo Panker, back in B12, shouting down one of his championship rivals, who has not yet made his pit stop, so it's looking good in this battle.
Gergo stuck behind another car that is yet to complete its mandatory pit stop for this race, and rather thinking to himself that maybe it was a good idea to follow Peter Roche for the first half an hour of this race instead. And it's one of those things where you regret it, and in hindsight you think maybe I should have waited a bit longer to get this done, especially with the fact that Jesperi Hilicalio has made up all the time he lost stuck behind Jonathan Bentz. In fact, he's right on the back bumper of Gergo Panker at this point in time. And you mentioned the mathematics that I'd done earlier to kind of figure out how the championship standings are looking at the moment. Well, I can tell you that things have got a bit more interesting since I did those initial calculations, Mike. I can give you a bit of an update. So basically at this point in time, Martin Lawrence and Mike Noble, 1 and 2. Noble is in second place, which would be enough to guarantee him first in the championship. However, there's a clause to that. I'm not entirely sure which driver has the fastest lap of the race, because they've both set an identical fastest lap time. Now, the way it traditionally works is the first driver to set the fastest lap of the session is given the fastest lap. However, unfortunately, our timing tool doesn't quite tell us that information. So
I think it's Lawrence, though, because he would have been ahead on track, I think.
It could be, Mike Jones, that we don't know who has won this race until after. Well, until after the results have been published, the results files. So things are heating up here, because if Martin Lawrence wins and he gets fastest lap, I think that puts him ahead by 1 point.
Yeah, we'd have to do the math on that, because it's actually before we get to that, Gergo Panker going for a bit of a move here down Dunlop. He's to just slide past Prioetti there. Good move by him, and of course Hilicalio was right up at the back of him just a moment ago, and he's fallen back a little bit. So Gergo making moves there, Ryan, and keeping Hilicalio behind them, and that's an interesting. Ooh, well, okay. He's just going to kind of pull over and let Hilicalio on by, I guess, realizing these guys are indeed quicker than him. So Hilicalio not going to lose too much time.
That'll annoy Gergo Panker for sure. Yep. Just seeing Peretti pull over and let Hilicalio through. It's it is something that you do experience sometimes as a racer. You think to yourself, well, why didn't you do that for me? And you feel a bit hard done by sometimes, but it is the way it is. And Giacomo Peretti lets Jesperi Hilicalio go, and he will continue to hunt down the likes of Gergo Panker. Jan Matthias, who had to start all the way at the back of the grid and technically in the pit lane, has decided to come in for his mandatory pit stop. So, interesting results there for Jan Matthias as to where he's going to come out. And you know what? It's been a pretty good start to the race, I think, for the likes of Jan Matthias. Of all considering the fact he did have to start at the from the pit lane. It's not an ideal situation to be in, but
speaking of good runs,
it could be worse. He could be Mikael Sundström, who qualified on the front row and got a drive-through penalty at the start.
But he just took P7. He's doing pretty well as well. For him, he's 11 seconds ahead of Matthias, according to the last timestamp. I think that will update after Matthias comes up. He's going to be a little bit farther than that as we come across the next sector time. But Sundström's now 20 seconds down, however, so I think he's kind of hit his limit of P7. I don't know that he's going to be able to make up over a second a minute going into the rest of this race. He's made his way through, what would be kind of the lower end of the track or lower end of the circuit and drivers. And now you're getting into those drivers you're just not going to be able to catch quite as much. But
so Mike,
yeah.
I have just realised something. You pointed out to me just a moment ago about the maths for the championship at this point in time. I was actually incorrect in my assessment way earlier on in the race when I said that Mike Noble has won most of the races this season. That is true up until this point in time. If Martin Lawrence wins today, I can tell you that, well, if Martin Lawrence wins and has the fastest lap of the race, that will mean...
off track?
I think that was Jaakko Torvinen.
Yeah, it was Torvinen.
If Martin Lawrence wins and gets fastest lap, then that means Mike Noble and Martin Lawrence will have equal points, equal fastest laps, equal pole positions, equal wins, and equal podiums for this season.
You can't get much different than that.
No, you can't. And the unfortunate side is, I don't know how you decide a winner amongst that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to be honest, we haven't had that. Haven't had much of a tie to begin with. More or less, that situation where everything is exactly equal. So, you know what? Maybe that does put a little bit of pressure on Mike Noble. Whether he knows all this or not, and he's done the math, who knows? It doesn't matter to him, though, because it doesn't matter whether he thinks he's going to win, whether he takes P2, or he thinks he's going to win when he takes P1. Mike Noble's going to go for P1, like we talked about. 21 minutes left on this race. We've done 18 laps so far. That puts us 9 to 10 laps for the finish. He's got a lot of time to sit here and pressure Lawrence, and he's been putting the pressure on. Seen small mistakes come out of the both of them, but not enough for an overtake at all. A couple laps ago, of course, we watched Mike Noble get all out of shape coming into Degner 2. And, coming down the West Straight right now into 130R, it doesn't have enough of a run here. He actually dropped a little bit of time coming through the end of Sector 2 into Sector 3. And we're not going to be able to see him come down onto the quarter panel of Lawrence here this time, but doesn't stop him from trying. Nick Setna giving that splitter cam at the last second. We were just, barely seeing a full screen of taillights there for a quick second as he gets really close. But crossing the line for lap 19. 2/3 of this race gone, Ryan, and we are not seeing a fastest lap be set still. 2:03, 2:76 still by both of them. And they're running 2:04s, nowhere even close to setting that new fast lap. And that could decide, as you said, decide the rest of the race. Macha, by the way, never mind. He dead eject pit. But Macha is still about, they're roughly about 5 seconds down kind of where they were. So no catching there at all.
And something I just had occur to me. Obviously, I'm not entirely sure how the championship standings will be decided if everything finishes as it is right now. But something that just occurred to me is that if Mike Noble doesn't win here today, and he loses the championship, maybe he'll regret not taking that early pit stop when he had the chance earlier on in the race. And I was, I did have a humorous moment just thinking to myself, what if the championship order is decided on alphabetical surname come the end of the race? So Mike Noble will be kicking himself because, of course, the letter L does come before the letter N in the alphabet. I'm not entirely sure if that's how it works, if we have a true deadlock. We're going to have to find clarification on that at some point in time, aren't we? Because if things finish as they are right now, I'm not entirely sure if we're going to be able to crown a championship on stream.
I don't think so either. So I think that here's what I know from a little bit of real life racing, right? I think what happens is we look at the overall finishing positions of everybody, right? So they'll both have 3 fast laps, 3 poles, 3 wins, 5 podiums, right? But did one of them get more P2s than the other? If so, that one's probably crowned the winner, right? And if they both got equal there, okay, well, what about P3s if either of them got any P3s? So maybe we go down even to that and just start looking down the order for that tie-breaking mark. Short of that, it's, okay, well, let's stick him in a number generator and see what comes up. And I think that it would be
Flip the coin.
basically, yeah, we don't even number generator. It's a coin flip at that point. So maybe we'll get a little American football going on here and do a little coin toss after the end of the race to decide that championship winner. But either way, that Noble and Lawrence right now, sweating they may be, smiling ear to ear, because this is 40 minutes more or less of just hard, close racing, which is not easy in these Porsche Cup cars. As we've said, no traction control on these things. You got to be careful, and when you're trying to be careful and be fast at the same time, not the easiest thing. And still, again, watching Noble here, just kind of riding the back, and I think it's going to be decided in the pit as who's going to win at this point.
Ken Collier in the chat has said we should do a drag race to decide the winner. And I'm not usually a big fan of drag racing, but I love the idea of the pressure of a championship sitting on your drag racing ability in a car like the Porsche Cup.
Fantastic.
We'll get some use out of Paul Ricard at least once this season.
Yeah, a drag race down the Mistral Straight. I love it.
Could definitely work. It's an idea that's been suggested to us before. But in the meantime, Peter Roche has found himself on the back of Bart Matcher, and Peter Roche was a good 3 seconds behind Bart Matcher way earlier on in the race. And, well, as soon as he gets up to the back of his teammate, Bart Matcher's decided, you know what, I'm going to go into the pit lane and you can just deal with it as is. And Peter Roche will say thank you very much. I will continue to go on to Hot Lap Simulator at this point in time, and it'll be interesting to see where Bart Matcher comes out. He should come out behind Ondrej Dedicek in theory, as long as I'm remembering where they were when they came into the pit lane, as Matt Samuel makes his way past the likes of Giacomo Peretti. Giacomo Peretti still yet to serve his mandatory pit stop, as is Dustin Vust, Wojciech Burgos, Mikhail Sundstrom, Daniele Flores, Peter Roche, Martin Lawrence, and Mike Noble. And I've actually just noticed Mike Noble, he's taken the lead of the race, Mike. 2 second gap between the likes of him and Martin Lawrence. So something has happened.
Let's catch that replay. So here it is. Oh, there it is. Yeah, I think that may have been a little netcode issue there, possibly. I don't know if that was a little netcode or he got loose. Really hard to tell from that angle. But that is Mike Noble taking it away, and he did not slow down. Mike Noble would have if he thought he tapped him. So there it is right there, and we can see the flat spots or possibly something going on with the tires as well, as he just overshot into T1 a little bit as well. And that's, that could be the deciding factor right there. That's all it takes. Like I said, Mike Noble all over the back of him for 40 minutes of this race, trying to force that error. Finally did, and that very well may cost him. By the way, as we're going to come back live here momentarily, I do want to point out, looking at the math of the lap times here, Bart Matcher did have a 1.5 second faster stop than Ondrej Dedicek, and once this goes back live, we will see that Dedicek is behind Matcher by about 1.5 seconds. So Matcher has also made up that position against Dedicek. So 2 positions going here in just the past couple laps, important positions as well for the point standings. And I think Noble's gone.
Well, he's got clean air now, hasn't he? So if he's going to set the fastest lap of the race, now's the time to do it. With 14 minutes to go, he's got plenty of time to do so. No one in front of him to obstruct his ability to go any quicker, and Martin Lawrence will be kicking himself because, of course, potentially throwing away the championship. I mean, I'm not entirely sure if either of these drivers knew the exact permutations that we do at this moment on time and stream. I do know that Mike Noble has a habit of listening into the live streams whilst he's racing on occasion. So if you are listening to us, Mike, and you've been listening to all the permutations, listening to all the permutations in your head whilst trying to battle with Martin Lawrence. Well, I mean, I've got 2 words. Yeah, give us a wave. And how can you concentrate like that, having Mike Jones and Ryan Gill in
Oh.
your ears constantly whilst
Ryan.
trying to fight Martin Lawrence. I mean,
It's like you've never seen a stream of Jardier.
Jardier is his own. I'm convinced Jardier is his own entity, though. I'm convinced he's a different species altogether at this point in time. But I guess I'll be doing my best Jardier impression on Wednesday, won't I? With the POV of the Xmas event that I'll be competing in. I'll be trying to represent RCI and not finishing last simulator, because there's some pretty quick people. But I've heard it's going to be a multi-class event, so maybe I'll get the chance to lap Killian Ryan Meenan on pace for once.
Yeah, Killian Ryan Meenan, Gergo Panker, of course. I know he'll be in the GT4s because we all know Gergo loves himself some GT4s, and not even just multi-class. Your standard multi-class. I'm thinking we're talking triple class, if I'm not mistaken. We're going to see some Porsche Cup cars floating around that grid as well. And Porsche Cup cars are, just about as quick as these GT3s. They can be. So I think that your concern, Ryan, might be the Porsche Cup cars lapping you.
Oh, well, Harry Conway did say earlier on that I would be the cameraman for the back of the Porsche Cup, series, and I think that the race is, I think it is going to be broadcast by ACR, I think it is,
Yeah,
and
Luke
Crane going to be broadcasting that. So one of our fellow commentator colleagues, technically, and I mean, I don't think it's beyond the doubt of saying he is the sim racing commentator, isn't he? At this moment in time, seems to be involved in almost everything, commentary-wise or sim racing related. But moving on from that, we'll have my broadcast my POV of that race coming up on Wednesday. But back to the present, we still have 11.5 minutes of Porsche Cup racing left to go here. And we have 6 cars left to serve their mandatory pit stops. You know what? What I've been thinking to myself is, ever since Stephen came in here and handed us that piece of paper concerning Jarkko Torvalen's penalty, it's been very quiet in the steward's box.
It has. While you were talking just now, I kind of poked my head in the door next door just to check on them. They are still in there. So I kind of gave them a wave, said anything happened.
Haven't fallen asleep yet.
not yet. No. They kind of gave me a thumbs up and said, it's been pretty clean. Besides for the lap 1 incidents, that was pretty much it. So there were apparently from the computer screen that I could see when I kind of poked my head in, looked like 4 lines of incidents on the stewarding spreadsheet. All of them were marked green for being done and implemented. So as we only have 1 official penalty, I'm going to assume the rest of those are racing incidents or no further action decided incidents. And that's pretty good. I mean, on our broadcasting tool here, we generally see, if we'll see if a little incident pops up, if there's anything. And I've been kind of monitoring it, thinking this isn't broken, is it? Because we haven't seen anything. But seems the stewards are there as well. Quite
Porsche Cup's
a clean little race.
It's been quite clean lately, actually. The Porsche Cup, we haven't really seen any massive accidents at all this season, which is always good to see. Obviously, no one likes to see pile-ups and all sorts of stuff. And obviously, some of these guys in the pro split here, we do also have a silver split and an AM split ongoing at the same time. They're running their own races, and they've been very clean as well, as of late. And it's always good to see people improving with their racecraft. And just another reminder for you guys that if you want to get involved with Racing Club International, you want to get yourself down here at Fortsum Racing as well, you can join us, !Discord in the chat. You can find the link to our Discord. Over 4,000 members strong. We hit that yesterday, just after the 9 hours of Imola. And of course, we only plan on growing bigger from there. And of course, we will be hosting many more events in the future. Mike already hinted to the fact we'll have about 5 championships running. The next Monday series is going to be a 488 Challenge Cup at all the Italian circuits. So 3-round championship, all the new Ferrari 2020 Evo cars. And it's going to be interesting, I think. And it's not fully confirmed yet, but we might have a guest that we had for the 9 hours of Imola potentially returning for that championship as well. And that's always exciting, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it is, and just to clarify that, a guest commentator, not a guest driver. So
yes, guest commentator.
Yeah, of course. We do have a lot of people floating around here in the ZA community here in RCI, and of course, Sam did join us yesterday for the 9 hours of Imola as we're seeing Dustin Woos take his pit stop. And yeah, Sam was quite excited to get some racing in, so hopefully she will find a time in her schedule to come on back. And of course, we've been trying to poke Shawnee into doing some as well, commentary with us. And I know she promised yesterday. It's on YouTube chat for everybody to see from yesterday. And Shawnee did say she'll be commentating sometime next year, so I'm really excited for that one as well.
We need Sam and Shawnee in the box, and then George Smith down in pit lane.
I'm for it.
It's the ultimate ZA combo, isn't it?
I'm for it. It'll just be a race face commentary, except with an RCI logo on it at that point. Of course, as
it probably will earlier, actually.
Yeah. As I was mentioned earlier, Raceface, one of our partners. So we're sorry there, Bertus. We seem to be stealing your commentators, perhaps. But I know that they do quite a bit with Raceface as well. Of course, George is pretty much their main commentator down there in Raceface, and Ryan, you've joined him quite a bit as well. Kind of a little bit of a trade-off. They steal our commentators too. But we were watching Wiglia there for a while. Nick Stednick has been monitoring the timing board. Wiglia has been catching up to Dedicek a bit. 7 minutes left in the race, and well within striking distance here. Kind of looking up and down the board. Yeah, he's about just under a second behind Dedicek. Dedicek about a second and a half behind Bart Macha still. That has not changed. They made their pit stops about 14 minutes ago, by the way. That roughly 1.5 second gap has stayed the same. However, we just saw Wiglia tick up about a tenth and a half through sector 1 of this track. Gergo Panker is not too far back as well. We're actually going to see him pop up, possibly not. That is him. Sorry, right behind Wiglia. There's Gergo Panker, 2.5 seconds back. I mean, he's had a pretty decent run for himself as well. Even though he made that early pit stop, lost a little time with what I'm going to call some back markers, basically. Drivers who had not made their pit stops that were just a little bit slower than him. He's potentially within striking distance. So these guys start fighting with each other, which Wiglia is now on the back of Dedicek. Dedicek is struggling, I think, with his tires here on the back half of this. Panker could very well catch up here and put some pressure on these guys as well, depending on how this fight goes over the next lap or so. We're going to see him start catching up. By the way, Ryan, I wanted to check in on the fastest laps, and if you take a glance over to your board, you will notice that, I think that is Macha, is it not? That was Macha off there. If we can catch a touch of a replay on that, I'm sure what we're going to see is him going a little wide on 130R, and that is not where you want to go wide. That car will just get so unsettled over that curb. There he goes. Doesn't know. He doesn't even need to go wide. He lost the grip coming in. That lack of traction control will do that to you, and there he goes, tumbling down the order. I do believe that very well may cost him the position that he was hunting for in the championship. He was potentially... you know what? Actually, looking at it, he should still be able to stay ahead of Hilicalio on the championship board. So I think he's going to be able to hold his position in the championship. But, man, that made it close. And, of course, Bart Macha is the one behind him. Not Macha. Dedicek is the one behind him. And Dedicek... I think he's still winning it. I'm not. My brain isn't working well enough to do that math offhand, but we're going to find out here in a minute. He just slowed again. Flat spots will get you there, Ryan.
Bart Mancha did struggle in the McLaren Masters Cup.
Yep.
That's not great. He did struggle in the McLaren Masters Cup here at Suzuka. Obviously, the McLaren 720S, a very different kind of car to the Porsche Cup, and actually returning to the action, Mikael Sundstrom and Matt Samuel are right on the back of Bart Matcher. So Bart Matcher's race, which was going fairly well and potentially could have looked like a podium here today, might not even finish in the top 10 at this rate, because Mikael Sundstrom, he had to serve a drive-through penalty early on for being out of position on the grid. He's right behind him now. Mike Noble comes into the pit lane to serve his mandatory pit stop. Martin Lawrence and Peter Roche will continue onwards. It seems the only two left to serve those pit stops. But I tell you what, Bart Matcher, he's found himself in a lot of trouble now. 2 mistakes in the space of, what would be a lap in theory. has unfortunately put him into the clutches of Mikael Sundstrom. And Mikael Sundstrom, he tends to strike more often than miss.
So, Ryan, Mike Noble did not have a good pit stop. That was 46 seconds from enter to exit, and that is a few seconds slower than we've seen some of the other cars doing. The fastest pit stop on the board was Bart Macha, in fact, at a 42.2. Now, he was handedly the fastest, but that might be a second and a half, and it could potentially be all Martin Lawrence needs, but we're going to come back to that in a minute as Bart goes wide again. Coming into the first curve, Mikael Sundstrom able to slide past. A little bit of a touch there even, as we're just seeing Bart struggle with grip so badly at this point. Mikael taking it in stride, doesn't even budge that car, but Macha is just struggling so much with grip that he's just going to start filtering positions here. He's just holding on for his life at this point. Sundstrom's already passed Gergo's teammate, in fact, Matt Samuel, now behind Bart Macha, and he's going to try and hold him off. 2 or so laps to go, depending on where the leader's at. And I'm actually seeing a car off in Spoon as well on the map there. I think that's David Gill, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that is the car down in last place that was off track there. So no one fighting for the lead battle. Martin Lawrence now is in his pit box. We're going to see in about 30 seconds or so about what this pit time will be. Peter Rache, of course, in the pit as well, as this is the final lap, more or less. Whenever that line is crossed, we are going to hear the race controller state leader on the final lap. Here comes Mike Noble, leader on the final lap now. Lawrence did pass the start-finish line in the pit lane. Lawrence still in the pit box. He should drop the jacks here shortly. This seems like a long pit stop to me, Ryan. I don't know what's happening with Lawrence, but it looks like Mike Noble is going to get that pretty handedly. Lawrence well behind. And there's that. It was actually a quicker pit stop than Noble was by about 0.3. But
nowhere near quick enough, though, unfortunately, for Noble, the likes of Martin Lawrence.
He was too far ahead.
Yeah, unfortunately so. And it looks to me, as we are on the final lap of the race, as you stated before, that it's going to be Mike Noble that reaps the rewards. He's been dominant all season, and it looks like he will take the championship here. We will be able to crown someone on stream by the looks of it, but everything is still yet to be decided behind, as, of course, Mikael Sundstrom has made his way past the likes of Bart Macha. Bart Macha finding himself on the brink of losing a top 10 finish in the final round of the championship here. It's not been a great race for Sundstrom. It's not been a great race for Bart Macha. It was actually looking pretty good until those couple of mistakes. Matt Samuel as well, outside of the top 10, a bit uncharacteristic of him as well. But I tell you what,
here he goes.
It's been a good race for some of the other guys out here in the championship so far. Noble, Lawrence, Dedicek, they're all going to be bringing home some seriously good points. And Matt Samuel just losing it a bit. Jan Matthias was having a good look there. And I tell you what, if Jan Matthias can get 11th or even a top 10 after starting from the pit lane, what a drive that would be to see out his season here at Racing Club International. But half a lap to go for these guys on track at the moment. But Mike Noble is making his way towards the Casio Triangle chicane. He has been absolutely dominant. He has been the best driver in the championship. He's got the window wipers going. The lights are flashing. He's round the final corner. Torvinen is going to slow down and let him lap him. And there you go. Mike Noble is your Porsche Cup Season 2 champion. Spin it over the line into the wall. And a good punt from Jarkko Torvinen for good measure. And that car, well, it's not going to go back to Porsche in as few pieces as it arrived. Let's just say that.
No, it is not. And I've been monitoring the battle back for P10 as well while that was happening. Doesn't look like any changes are going to happen there. Actually, nope, never mind. I was going to say a little bit of a drag race back there, but it is not. Looks like Matt Samuel is going to come across the line at P11. So that's Sundstrom P9, Macha 10, Samuel 11, and Jan Matthias in P12. Heck of a last few laps from those guys, and of course Mike Noble just with the overall dominating performance. The one mistake is really what does it, and we we always say at this level of driving, it really only takes one mistake. And, in these Porsche Cup cars, it's, of course, easier to make those mistakes than, say, a GT3 car without the traction control. That's part of the reason we love these cars. I think one of the best races we've ever put on, Ryan, would be the Jesse and George commentated Bathurst Porsche Cup race with the old community that we were a part of, if I'm not mistaken. And that was just one of the most phenomenal races that I think I've ever watched. I mean, it was just an hour of action-packed battling, to say the least. Here is your P2 finisher in the race, as well as P2 finisher in the championship. This is Martin Lawrence here. Here's his teammate, Andre Dedicek, following alongside the...
Googlia, I think that is.
Yeah, I think it's Quigley. Yeah, so Sundstrom's teammate. And there's Panker going past as well. Of course, Panker did finish in P5. You can see as the chat pops up here, Noble, saying Lawrence, just a fantastic race from these two. Lawrence absolutely exhausted for this. And Ryan, I mean, this was a fantastic championship. Obviously, I was only able to join you for one race, but I'm glad it was this one. That was heck of a race by Noble and Lawrence, and of course, all the way through the mid-pack as well. I think all of those championship positions are really going to be interesting now. I think Macha is going to lose himself a couple, maybe a position, maybe two even, with the unfortunate mistakes. But you, of course, were here for all six. And is this what you expected out of the finale?
Well, I mean, I have to be honest, I expected Mike Noble to kind of just take the lead at the start and run away with it, as he has for most of the season, but I was kind of glad to see that didn't exactly happen. We did get some great entertainment towards the end of this championship, and it has been very entertaining. It is always entertaining to commentate on these Porsche Cup races, and it's something that's quite close to my heart, because it's where I started with sim racing commentary, Porsche Cup at Zandvoort, so as much as I'm not too keen on the sound of these cars, they'll always hold a special place in my heart. But thank you, everyone, for joining us here today and across the course of the whole season. We really, really do appreciate it. And as Mike said earlier, if you're new around here, please do subscribe and hit the like button. Lets us know we're doing an amazing job. And of course, we will have plenty more racing in 2021. We have the Ferrari 488 Evo Cup coming up in the new year, as well as a new GT4 championship, the Friday championship, which is going to be absolutely incredible. So many different race lengths going on and different formats for that championship as well. We'll have Race Room as well on Wednesdays, and of course the World Tour for the RCI Endurance Championship is going to be making its debut with a 24 hours of Kyalami mixed into the calendar as well. But we'll be starting out at Silverstone. But from everyone here at Racing Club International, this is the final broadcast of the year for us. I will be conducting a bit of a live stream, POV live stream for the Kunos Christmas event on Wednesday. So do make sure to join us for that if you're interested to see how a commentator would do behind the wheel. But if you're only interested in the broadcasts, we bid you adieu for this year, and we look forward to seeing you in 2021. Thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your year.